This morning, let's explore the end of clinging discourse. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi. This is the Lama you are looking for. This morning, we could chant and meditate and enjoy a lesson or two, but first, if you love Star Wars and you wish to meditate as transformatively as Luke Skywalker learned to do on Dagobah under the guidance of Yoda, be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. If at any point during this morning's live stream you have a question about meditation or philosophy or even chanting, there is no need to be shy. Simply type your question in great detail in the chat window on the right-hand side of the screen. Unless, of course, you're watching a replay, then you'll want to type your question in the comment area below the video. This end of clinging discourse, attributed to the historical Buddha, can be read in the Samyutta Nikaya. This translation is done for us by David Maurice. It has been adapted by yours truly. Just so Ananda, in one who contemplates the enjoyment of all things that make for clinging, craving arises. Through craving, clinging is conditioned. Through clinging, the process of becoming is conditioned. Through the process of becoming, rebirth is conditioned. Through rebirth, though rebirth are conditioned, old age. Through rebirth, all conditioned old age and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Thus arises the whole mass of suffering again in the future. But in the person Ananda who dwells contemplating, the sorrow of all things that make for clinging, craving ceases. When craving ceases, clinging ceases. When clinging ceases, the process of becoming ceases. When the process of becoming ceases, rebirth ceases. When rebirth ceases, old age and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair cease. Thus the entire mass of suffering ceases. Suppose Ananda there were a great tree, adamant were to come with an axe and a basket, and were to cut down the tree at the root. After cutting it at the root, he would to dig a trench, and would to pull out the roots even to the rootlets and fibers of them. Then he were to cut the tree into logs, and were then to split the logs, and were then to make the logs into chips. And when he were to dry the chips in wind and sun, then burn them with fire. Collect them into a heap of ash, then winnow the ashes in a strong wind. Or let them be carried away by the swift stream of a river. Surely that great tree that's cut down at the roots would be made as a palm tree stump, become unproductive, become unable to sprout again in the future. Just so Ananda in him who dwells contemplating the sorrow Of all things that make for clinging, the entire mass of suffering ceases. Okay, so now let's have a cold slap in the face. More than 5 centuries elapsed between the death of the Buddha and the writing down of these discourses. Some were a greater span of time. And yes, there are apologists who said that they were transmitted flawlessly, mouth to ear, and an unbroken chain. But the fact is, the probability of editorializing, if not complete fabrication, is significant. Now, this begs the question, how is one to know which scriptures to trust? And the answer to that is going to be unsettling. It's not our job to blindly trust anything. It's our job to be little scientists and treat whatever we read or hear as the stuff experiments are made out of. We receive the teaching, the technique, and we apply it once every 12 hours for 7 consecutive days. If that which we apply does not increase our peace and wisdom and joy and love, then we set it aside. No need to hate it, no need to label it, just set it aside. I disagree with the author of this text, though dead he most likely be. Clinging and craving are different things. And if we refrain from clinging and craving, we undermine our mindfulness, increase our aversion, which is unnecessary and unhelpful. Our job is not to stop having impulses. Our job is to notice them as we breathe in and release them as we breathe out. They are still present, but in the life of a sage, in the life of one who has mastered the teachings, although they are present, our choices and our utterances and our deeds are liberated from their tyranny. Let's spend 45 seconds on housekeeping. Every 12 hours, broadcast a live meditation class without any ads. This channel is supported by the kindness of viewers just like you. With your help, this channel could come to support the next generation of nuns, monks, yogis, lamas, and even brick-and-mortar meditation centers. For the cost of a single cup of coffee once a month, you could what's the word? Not click, not select. There's another word I want to use. Capture. You could use your phone's camera to capture the QR code, or you could simply click the appropriate link in the description area below the video. Wrong button. Let's try button 9. Just as an athlete might warm up before he takes his turn at bat, we can warm up the neural pathways responsible for empathy and enthusiasm by performing the following chant of bodhicitta and refuge. May I liberate all beings by relying on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students. May I liberate all beings by relying on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students. May I liberate all beings by relying on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students. Let's chant my adaptation and amplification of the Heart of Wisdom Sutra. It is said that Quan Chi and Pusa, an archetype of enlightened compassion, while moving in the deep peace of perfect understanding, shed light on the five aggregates and found them equally void. After this realization, she made peace with all pain. Let's take a moment to explore this. No matter what metaphysical system you use or don't use to organize or label your experience of life, there's a way of navigating it that helps us to make peace with whatever befalls us. And so I'd like to explain it in a very trenchant manner, if that's okay. The key to practicing mindfulness is to mentally recite "notice this" during each inhalation. And the key to practicing meditation is to mentally recite emptiness during each exhalation. Why is that? Ask a neuroscientist. They'll tell you every time we inhale, we access our sympathetic nervous system, which is wired to support the sensory acuity that allows us to notice sensations, flavors, scents, sounds, sights, and the like, as well as notice emotion, intention, thought, memory, and imagination. When we put aside the concentration favored by our controlling tendencies and exercise the courage to notice vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and spontaneously, then during mindfulness training, we could actually feel like the only label we need ever use is simply the pronoun this. But what are we to do with all that which we notice? Fortunately, every time we exhale, we inadvertently access our parasympathetic nervous system, which is wired for both physical relaxation as well as mental release. But what has that to do with voidness or emptiness? Well, if we approach emptiness or voidness or shunyata literally, we're apt to fall into the trap of superstition or skullduggery. However, if we are fortunate enough to approach emptiness or voidness as a figure of speech, then all it does is viscerally explain what it feels like when we are relaxing and releasing naturally during our exhalation. Think of it this way. As we physically relax and mentally release in harmony with each exhalation, that which we previously noticed during our inhalation can now feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast, empty void. Now, back in 4th grade, I learned that a simile is only as effective as it is relatable. So what is a real-world example of a non-graspable vast empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although is tantalizing to the eye, is intangible to the hand? That's it. Mystery of emptiness solved. Why do we muck about with figures of speech when they lend themselves to confusion? All vertebrate life forms on this planet evolved to think symbolically. First, our ancestors perceived, and then they began recalling perceptions and anticipating perceptions. That is the, evolutionarily speaking, the building blocks upon which our minds are built. Let's continue with the chanting. Listen, Shari Buddha, form as emptiness, emptiness is form. Form does not differ from emptiness, emptiness does not differ from form. Whatever you notice during your inhalation, you can release during your exhalation. The same is true with feeling, appraisal, impulse, and awareness, regardless of how you organize your experience of reality. Listen, Shari Buddha, take two. Listen, Shari Buddha, all phenomena are marked with emptiness. They are neither produced nor destroyed, neither corrupted nor purified, neither increasing nor decreasing. Therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no appraisal, no impulse, and no awareness that once perceived cannot be released. I like to call this an inferential double negative. Like when a stuffed shirt from Washington says, "Well, I don't disagree with that." What? Exactly. So that's what's going on here. Whatever we notice, we can release. That's the magic, that's the quote-unquote magic of our autonomic nervous system. No sensation, no flavor, no sound, no sound, no sight, no phenomena that once perceived cannot be released. No body, no tongue, no nose, no ears, no eyes, no mind that once perceived cannot be released. No feeling, no tasting, no smelling, no hearing, no seeing, no noticing that once perceived cannot be released. No interdependent origins and no extinction of them from confusion to aging and death that once perceived cannot be released. No matter how we organize our experience of reality, whatever we notice during the in-breath, we can release to a certain degree during our exhalation. No stress, no exacerbation, no liberation, no path, no understanding, no attainment that once perceived cannot be released. Because there is no attainment that once perceived cannot be released, the Bodhisattva archetypes of enlightenment supported by the perfection of understanding, find no obstacles for them as that once perceived cannot be released. Having no obstacles that once perceived cannot be released, I transcend the tyranny of fear, liberating themselves forever from the tyranny of illusion and realizing perfect nirvana. All Buddhas of the past, present, and future, thanks to this perfect understanding, arrive at full right and universal enlightenment. Therefore one should know that perfect understanding is like a great mantra, is like an unequal mantra. Notice the presence of the word like. We're not saying, in addition to perfect understanding, we also need this mantra. We're saying perfect understanding is so powerful, it's so transformative, it is as if it was a mantra. So what could that mantra be like? Hey guys, let's practice the perfection of wisdom and we'll all become enlightened. That's it. It's supposed to be a joke. Let's continue. The destroyer of all suffering, the incorruptible truth. A mantra prajnaparamita's perfect understanding could therefore be proclaimed. This is the mantra gate gate pada samgate bodhi swaha. May also notice, relax, may also notice, relax, and release that we go completely go. Completely and perfectly go to enlightenment. Before we meditate, let's take a moment to review Bengali crease counting. On the bottom right-hand corner of the page, there was something that's talked about counting 16 sets of 16 rounds. Here's how we do that. Consider, if you will, your left hand. Upon each finger, there are 3 sets of creases and a tip, which means we can count to 4 on each finger. And since we have 4 fingers, and 4 times 4 is 16, we can count to 16. 1 round, 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Do yourself a favor, only advance the thumb during the inhalation. Now, what if we count sets of 16 rounds? 1 set of 16 rounds, 2 sets of 16 rounds, and so forth till we come to 16 sets of 16 rounds. Well, my pocket calculator tells me that gets us 256 rounds, which my clock tells me takes approximately 30 minutes. Do that twice, and you're meditating for an hour. If that sounds impossible, then respect your limitations. The first week you could practice 1 round of 16 breaths every 12 hours. The second week, 2 rounds. The third week, 3 rounds. The fourth week, 4 sets. I got confused. The 5th week, 5 sets, and so forth. And within 32 weeks, less than 3/4 of a year, you could grow comfortable sitting for an hour twice daily. By progressing gradually and gently, it gives your mind and your body and your all the institutions and individuals that populate your life time to adjust, thus reducing stress. So I'm going to tap button 9. It's 23 minutes after the hour. Let's meditate. Here's a quick pro tip. Remember back in 4th grade when they taught you how to sound out syllables and maybe tap them out like emptiness? Mentally reciting it in a way that emphasizes the syllables helps us to really relax. Remember, the third enlightenment factor is energy. So it's perfectly okay, if not advantageous, to inhale enthusiastically. Consider the aphorism. Consider the aphorism. There is no sustainable way to answer a pointed question. Why is that? Because whether they know it or not, it's often they do, but whether folks know it or not, every time they're asking us to answer a pointed question, they're really not asking for information. They're asking for us to fork over a little bit more of our personal power until we are an empty husk, empty of anything left to give. And then they'll just move on to the next person, maliciously or ignorantly, but most certainly destructively. If we don't ask people questions, how are we to converse inferentially? Instead of saying, tell me of your day, like we're giving someone the third degree or interrogation. So we say, I hope you've had a good day. Or, I'd love to hear of your day. Instead of, how is your family? I hope your family's well. Giving them the choice to either say, why, thank you, how kind of you to ask. Or to say, oh, let me tell you all about it. Giving people the choice empowers them, makes them feel loved, makes them feel respected. And that's a beautiful thing, is it not? the screen's going to go to that, so we'll deal with it momentarily. Okay, for the next 16 sets of 16 rounds, we will alternate between the odd number of breaths and the even number of breaths. Give yourself permission to have a learning curve. That's what I say. So crown refers to the fontanel. Root refers to the perineum.